In a world where everything is expensive, and despite everybody's best efforts, home prices are still at record highs. If you're one of the people that is fortunate enough to be able to afford to buy a home right now, like let's acknowledge that, and you've decided to go ahead and hop into the home buying market, the last thing you want to do is overpay for a house. And it's becoming harder and harder to tell whether a house is priced high due to the market or if it's just a greedy home seller trying to milk every dollar that they can out of a home buyer.
You greedy little.
So today, I'm going to teach you how to spot an overpriced house. And these are not hard, fast rules, but they are indicators. And if you stick around, you pay attention, and you take heed and then apply these to your home search, then I guarantee that it saves you thousands of dollars. But not just that, it'll also save you a whole bunch of stress and heartache, because one of the biggest regrets for home buyers over the past couple years is the fact that they feel like they overpaid for their house. And I can totally relate to that. So it's me and you against those greedy home sellers, and I'm gonna make sure that you leave here armed with everything you need to know to spot an overpriced house. All right, let's get into it. One thing a home builder is never going to want to do is lower the home price. Like, they won't even negotiate most times, but they will offer you $10, $20, $30,000 in closing costs and incentives and upgrades, and give you a 2-1 buy down. Hey, if somebody's offering you a 2-1 buy down, run away. If you cannot afford the interest rate that you get that is locked in, you don't need the house, because we don't know what the future holds. And with a 2-1 buy down, the only guarantee is the fact that your house is going to be more expensive later on. And then if we talk about the closing costs and the upgrades, like, the builder has normally made some sort of deal with a mortgage lender, and they're kind of getting kickbacks and making it make sense money-wise for them to give you all these things. And the reason that they don't want to lower the price is because it then brings the price down of all of the other houses. Now, Redfin did a study in 2022, and it found that 42% of new home sales offered some sort of incentive. Now, a 5K, 10K incentive, it's nice, it's sexy, and that sounds kind of reasonable. But once they start offering you $30,000 in bonus cash, but they won't touch the price, well, that's a red flag, and you need to look out for that, because if you have to sell that house the next year or the next couple years, 9 times out of 10, you won't be able to sell it for what you bought it for. A good thing to do, depending on the age of the neighborhood, might be to look around at other houses that are for sale, that are resale, and see what that same floor plan sells for by somebody who's owned it for a year or two. Because the second you move into it, it loses all of that new home value. So beware. Those builder incentives are sexy, and they play a nice psychological trick to make you think you're getting a deal. They're a great marketing tool, but in reality, all they do is mask the fact that that house is overpriced. Another key indicator that you got to pay attention to, especially when it comes to these new build houses, is the days on market. Now, most times, if the builder listed the house when it was still in construction, then the days on market might be 100 and something. Like, it could be something crazy. So it's going to be key that you ask the builder's rep, how long has this house been finished? Okay. The average days on market, according to the National Association of Realtors last year, was just 18 days. Typically, I like to tell my clients, if we're seeing double the amount of days on market with no price drops, or maybe just like one $5,000 price drop, then we can pretty much guarantee that that house is
overpriced.
And the days on market thing, like that doesn't just work for new constructions. It's also a key indicator for resales as well. So if we decide to leave our builder friends and think that we can get a better deal on the resales, well, then those days on market become way easier to spot. And Zillow has the history of the house, which is actually one of the great things that Zillow does provide. And you can see when they listed it, when they took it off the market, when it went under contract, or if it ever went under contract. And so one of those houses that's been sitting for double the days on market and has not gone under contract and maybe only had one small price drop, well, you can pretty much guarantee that house is overpriced. And if we make an offer, it won't be for the asking price, that's for sure. Now, one of the key ways for you to know what the average days on market is for your specific area is your real estate professional. Get somebody who is going to do the work to make sure you're making an informed decision. And they can do a comparative market analysis. And not only can they compare that house to the other houses around it that have sold, not just the ones that are on the market, right? Because they could all be overpriced. But you want to look at the ones that have actually sold and base your price off of that. Let's say we found a house and it looks good and it's had a few extra days more than the average days on market. And we look at it compared to the other houses in the neighborhood and the price doesn't look that far off. This could be a solid candidate, right? Well, I want you to look a little bit deeper and look at the price per square foot. Now, a lot of my clients actually know about this and I love it. To me, it is one of the best ways to price a house. Now, of course, there's a lot going on the inside of houses, which we'll get to later. But right now, using the price per square foot is a great way to tell if a house is overpriced or underpriced. So it might have a very similar sales price to the other houses around it, but if it is 100, 200, 300 square foot less than those, but it's priced the same, that joint's overpriced. All right, it's overpriced. Now, here's a little rule of thumb. Typically, the larger a house is, then the lower the price per square foot. The smaller a house is, then kind of goes up, gets a little bit higher, which is understandable. So make sure that whoever your real estate professional is, if you need me to refer one to you that knows all this stuff, I absolutely will. Just click the link in the description. I got you. But make sure that they are telling you what the average price per square foot is for this area. And if that house looks all good, but the price per square foot is too high, then just run away. Run away or negotiate, right? You make sure you got a good negotiating agent, because that's going to be another like tip that'll save you on an overpriced house is if your agent is a beast at their negotiations. All right, let's go on to the next one. Another thing that I see happen a lot is people will price their house based off of the upgrades that they did, but a lot of times they'll overprice it because of the upgrades. So they'll think that I put $10,000 into the kitchen, so I can add $10,000 to the price. That doesn't necessarily translate. Now, according to Remodel Magazine, they did an article in 2023 and they said that like a fully remodeled kitchen, huge kitchen remodel project will only fetch about 60% of the value that they paid for it. And I've got an appraiser buddy and he kind of gave me another rule of thumb, like only add about 50% of what you paid for a thing to the actual value of the house. Now, sometimes it'll add nothing. Like if a seller changed out all of the mirrors in all of the bathrooms and made them these cute little vanity mirrors with like frames around them and like they're all nice, that doesn't add to the value of the house. Now, that's something that might make somebody choose this house over the neighbor's house that does not have that. But that is like a personal preference. Now, my clients who have bought their houses will call me all the time and say, hey, should I do this to my house? Will it actually add any value? And majority of the time, I'm telling them no. If it's not like a major remodel that like changes the entire feel of the house, then it most likely won't add any value. Now, when you're looking at these houses and somebody's gone in and flipped them and changed the flooring and added paint and just put lipstick on a pig, it will increase the value some, but likely not for as much as they are trying to charge you. Again, look at the price per square foot. Look at the comparable homes. There might be something that sold in the last 30 to 60 days that was also fairly upgraded. And then you can base your price off of that one. But don't just go in and look at the shiny objects and get blinded by the light and think just because somebody put $40,000 into a house that they can fetch an extra 60. It just doesn't always work that way. Like, of course, sometimes it does. If they bought the house below market value and then they added 60K, that 60K might add 100K. But those instances are kind of few and far between. They are definitely the exception and not the rule. So beware of the shiny object because it's usually not worth what the home seller thinks it is. Now, if upgrades don't necessarily translate to an increase in home value, then neither does your speculation about what's going to happen to this general neighborhood over the coming years. Like, just because there's a new park coming around the corner doesn't mean that you can add 30K to your sales price. It just doesn't work like that. There would need to be some sort of massive transformative event coming to the city in order for those speculative prices to kind of make sense. But like, even then, it is just speculation. You could overprice your house today, somebody buys it, next year the transformation happens, but also they were building a whole bunch of homes to meet that. And now you can't sell the house for what you bought it for because you were expecting home prices to go up, but the amount of inventory on the market also went up, which dragged your price down. If somebody is using the future value of an area as the selling point for a price that just does not make sense, then run away. Run away. This also happened to me when I bought my house during the craze. Like, the builder told me, man, these prices have been going up so high, so fast that if you buy it, then next year you can probably sell it for 20% more than you bought it for now. Now, I am a mortgage professional and a real estate broker, so I did not believe it. But I wanted to, and I hoped that it was true. When I bought the house that I'm in, which I bought for way too much, that's another video that I have posted, but I knew that I was overpaying for the house and I did all my checks and balances. None of it made sense, but I loved the house. That's why houses can be a terrible investment sometimes because we move off of emotion rather than logic in a lot of cases. And Redfin says that about 10% of homes that are overpriced will sit on the market longer than any of the other homes and undergo several price drops. And for the home sellers, like, I've seen a home seller overprice their house, right? And they did it because the real estate agent told them that they could get that price. Well, the real estate agent knew that they could not get that price. And we call that buying the listing. So that real estate agent agreed to this super high price just so they could get the listing and eventually drop the price down to a price that makes more sense. But most of the time when that happens, the price that it sells for is lower than the comparable homes. Why? Because there's a bit of a stigma on that house. Like, me and you, we're looking at that house and we're like, why has it been on the market this long? Oh, it's been on the market for 100 days. The average time is 30 and it's just now priced at the same price as all the other ones. Well, it is not worth that to us now. And that's the funny thing about value. The value of a house or pretty much anything is really what somebody is willing to pay. A person can get an appraisal on a house and it can say that the value of this house is 300, but if there's not a market for it and nobody wants to pay 300K for that house, well, then the value is not 300K. It's that 275K offer that they get. And that brings me to my next point. So we're out looking at houses, trying to make sure that we don't get hosed by some builder or some seller. but we find one that we like, right? Price is a little high. Like all these little indicator bells just keep going off, going off, going off, going off. But we love it. Well, what do? You put in an offer, right? You put in an offer that makes sense to you. Now, there are some things that we need to talk about. I know what you're thinking. 100K under the asking price. Let's see what they do. Okay. But if you throw in that lowball offer that is just kind of ridiculous and disrespectful, well, then the seller might feel disrespected and just completely close off any chance of you getting that house. So there's some other things that we need to take into account here before we just go chopping down their price, right? Other things like, are you going to be asking for that seller to pay your closing costs? Because that money is saved directly from your pocket and comes directly out of their pocket. So if you're going to ask them for a 40K decrease on the sales price and then also ask them to pay $12,000 in closing costs, well, essentially you just made a $52,000 come up and they took a $52,000 loss. Like that's not really a win-win situation. So if you're going to be asking for these extra things like getting your closing costs paid or getting a home warranty done or having them upgrade instead of fix things that are going on in the house, well, then take that to account in your offer. Maybe it doesn't make sense for you to lowball them an extra 20 or 30K because you know you're going to make that up in the closing costs that you request or get your interest rate by down. In some cases, I've seen a seller pay off the remaining rent that somebody had left on their lease so that they could move into that house early. There's different ways to make this work. The other person that we have to please in this equation is the appraiser, right? So even if you did put in an offer on this house, you didn't like the price, but you loved the house, well, that appraiser, they might take everybody back down to earth. The appraiser is there to make sure that the bank is making a solid investment. And he's going to compare that house to all the other houses around it that have sold and come up with an actual value. And typically, their value is what we're going to go by. So if we put it under contract for 200K, the appraiser says it's only worth 180. Well, in most cases, you're only going to be paying 180. That's a second negotiation, and you're going to have to get with your real estate pro to make that work. But most times in my market in Texas, I see the sellers go ahead and drop the price in order to meet the appraisal because if one appraiser says it, then another one might say the same thing. And they don't want to have to add more days on market and risk having to sell it for the exact same thing, but they just had to make an extra mortgage payment in the meantime. So the appraiser can definitely help you in these cases. It can also hurt you if you're just trying to tack too much money onto a house in order to get your closing costs and stuff paid. So be aware, there's different factors, and just know value is what you're willing to pay for the house. Check this next video out. I'll tell you about kind of my experience overpaying for a house. Hopefully you can learn from it. I appreciate you spending some time here with me today. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.